Right, this video will definitely not be controversial and will not trigger some people to the point that some people will come to my house with very sharp things, right? If you're someone who likes to have a peek at motorsport from the past, then there is a very high chance that you have stumbled across one of the most, if not the most infamous eras in the history of the World Rally Championship, Group B. Despite lasting only a short 5 years from 1982 to 86, in its lifespan, the Group B era not only gave birth to some of the most iconic cars in WRC history, but it also had a lasting impact on the whole rallying world, with things such as four-wheel drive, improved safety, and many other elements being reshaped thanks to Group B. This era is still talked about loads, even nearly 40 years since its demise, and in fact, Group B is talked about so much to the point that a notable size of the community consider Group B as the best era in the WRC history. Now, whenever I see people say Group B is the best era, I just sit there thinking, really? Really? Well, that's because I believe that Group B is overrated. Now, before any of you guys go into the comment section in caps lock to say something, allow me a few minutes to explain myself. But just before that, if you actually like the stuff that I put out here, then hit that like button, help me hit 1000 subscribers by subscribing to the channel as well. Have a look at all my other social media profiles as well, because I'm active there sometimes. And now let's get into the reasons why I think Group B is overrated, starting with speed. Now, whenever these so-called Group B fanboys try to justify the reasons why Group B is the best era in WRC history, one of their main arguments that they use is something along the lines of Group B cars were the fastest cars in history and every WRC car afterwards are slow as fuck. Well, in terms of top-end speed, probably, but the thing is, top speed is a very silly way of measuring how fast a rally car is. There is almost no long smooth straights in rally, so the focus goes into tight and twisty corner performance to maintain a high average speed. Average stage speed. That is how you determine the speed of a rally car. To have a better understanding of the speed difference, let's have a look at the highest average rally speed recorded in the Group B era and compare that to the overall highest average speed ever recorded in a WRC rally. Both of these speeds were set in Finland, so we have a pretty even comparison. The highest average rally speed recorded in the Group B era was at the 1984 1000 Lakes Rally, now known as Rally Finland, with Ari Vatanen winning the event in his Peugeot 205 T16 with an average speed of 110.3 km an hour. Group B cars at this time made around 450 to 550 horsepower and weighed less than 1000 kilograms. Now, the record for the highest average speed ever recorded in a WRC rally was actually set earlier this year in this year's edition of Rally Finland, with home hero Kalle Rovanperä winning the event in his Toyota GR Yaris Rally 1. The 2025 WRC cars make less power and way more than the Group B cars, but despite that, Kalle's average speed was almost 20 kilometers an hour faster than that 205. Now, obviously, there could be some factors that go against the Group B cars, but either way, the speed difference is clear. I also saw some people say that Group B cars have performance comparable to Formula 1 cars of the same era. This statement's like, just look at the Group B car specs and compare them to the Formula 1 car specs of the same era. You don't need a genius to know that the Formula 1 car is clearly better. Saying that the Group B cars are faster than modern WRC cars is kind of like saying that milk before cereal is better than cereal before milk. It's a pointless and meaningless statement. And speed isn't the only reason why modern WRC is better than Group B. There's also the element of drive. Another argument I see the Group B fanboys use is, well, if they're not the fastest cars, then at least the drivers of that era were real men, more talented, pushed their machinery to the absolute limit with no driver aids, no big thoughts on safety, and always put their lives on the line for glory. Well, first of all, it wasn't an all-men show, and secondly, that whole statement is not entirely true. Now yes, the safety standards back then were lower, but that's not a good thing. The way the Group B cars were built meant that they were not pushed to the limit 24/7. Group B era drivers were more focused on just getting to the end in one piece, and those Group B compilations that you see on YouTube, well, they only show a very small bit of what Group B is like. What those clips don't show you, however, is what Group B cars were like on average, most of the time. And Group B cars on average were nowhere near those clips that you see on YouTube. Jumps, for example. Group B cars tend to take it easy through the jumps. They try to stay as close to the ground as possible. Modern WRC cars, on the other hand, they go full send on every single jump because their cars can handle it. The lines used were also very different. Group B cars almost always avoided the sides of the roads, always sticking to the middle. The lines were not really precise and the cars would just simply brake if they tried to go to the edges of the road. Modern WRC cars, on the other hand, leave nothing on the table. They are always on the absolute limit because, like I said before, the cars can handle it. And regarding the drivers of the Group B era, well, they were simply not as talented as modern drivers. Towards the end of the Group B era, the drivers often complained that the cars were too fast for their brains to keep up with. The modern stuff are way faster, and I see zero modern drivers make any sort of complaints about the fact that the modern cars are too fast. Plus, modern cars don't have stuff like ABS and traction control, so modern cars are not easy to drive. I'm not saying that Group B cars are easy to drive because they weren't, but all WRC cars in each era are hard to drive in their own right. And also, back in those days, every single driver never did the full season, whilst nowadays most of the drivers do the full season. And speaking of seasons, that is a nice segue to our... Hang on. Hello? Big man, we are in the middle of the video right now, so did you remember to remind the viewers to like this video and subscribe to the channel to help us reach 1000 subscribers, and that we will be doing a Q&A video when we hit 1000 subscribers? Huh, I did almost forgot to do that. Viewers, do what the guy on the phone just said to give us some extra support. Yes, please. Now finish talking about the Group B being overrated before people come to your front door with pitchforks. Right, as I was saying, we can now go to our next point, which is popularity. Some Group B nerds would also like to say, Group B was more popular than modern rallying in terms of competition numbers, spectator numbers and viewership. No. Big no. One thing you have to understand is that every single driver back in those days never did the full season. Even the eventual world champions of those seasons never did every single rally. In fact, the first time that the world champion did the full season was in 1994, whereas in modern times the majority of WRC drivers do the full season. Even the flyaway rounds, which in the Group B era were very quiet, due to the high cost of actually getting the competitors and all the machinery to that location in the first place. And cost is also another factor in this topic. Now yes, the WRC in 2025 is not in the healthiest position due to only 10 competitors on average competing in each rally in the top class. And also the modern cars are not the cheapest things in the world. But Group B was much worse. There were many events in the Group B era, especially towards the end of the flyaway rounds where only 6 cars contested the top class. And because the Group B era had very little rules in terms of how you build a car and no restrictions on cost, it very quickly became a spending war. The manufacturers with the deepest pockets would simply just run away into the distance and force the other manufacturers with no choice but to leave the series. And the manufacturers would slowly start to leave towards the end of the Group B era, so even if the Group B rules survived beyond 1986, it would have most likely been dropped anyway due to high costs. So in fact, the Group B era of the WRC towards the end was slowly starting to suffer the same problems that the current WRC landscape is suffering. And in terms of spectator numbers and viewership, yes, I know, rally TV is a bit pricey and most of the viewing is behind some kind of paywall at the moment, but modern rallies are way more accessible than Group B. Back in those days, the only things that were really televised were just 4 stages per rally and a 1-hour highlights package. Nowadays, most if not all of the stages are televised and there are more highlights packages available. And in some countries, the rallies are televised for free in some kind of form on television. Now I do agree that the current broadcasting structure can be improved by making it cheaper and streaming some stages for free on YouTube, but the WRC nowadays is more accessible than Group B ever was, and the better the accessibility, the better the viewership. And finally, we need to discuss one more important thing which led to the demise of Group B, and that is safety. In modern times, one of the most important aspects of motorsport is safety. Now I know there are going to be some people who will think that safety shouldn't be the most important aspect of motorsport, but if you're really one of those people who cares little about safety, then I guess you really want to see others go to hospital or something like that. The safety standards in the Group B days were very small compared to nowadays, but that is no bueno. In fact, safety was one of the big reasons why Group B ended. There were many huge crashes in the Group B days and many of them injuring spectators and competitors, and unfortunately in some cases they would be fatal. And after Henry Toivonin's life-ending crash at the 1986 Tour de Corse in France, the Group B rules would be dropped dropped for 1987 and Group A cars would replace them. Since then, the safety standards have improved drastically and rallying nowadays is as safe as it's ever been. There is still an element of danger, but it is much better compared to the 80s. We also have stuff like crowd control to worry less about some idiot going onto the road when the cars are coming by. The cars are much stronger and protect our beloved drivers in a crash a lot better, and all in all, the tragedies from the past helped us to improve and make our beloved sports safer to enjoy. There still might be some people who would care little about safety and would say that the safety aspect takes away a little bit from the driver's skill, but I would much rather see my favorite drivers compete and finish safely rather than in the hospital, and I think safety doesn't take away anything from their skill. To quickly summarize everything I just went through, if you're one of the people who thinks that the Group B era was the best era in WRC history and that everything afterwards is bad, shut up. Just shut up and accept the fact that the WRC is in a better position compared to the 80s. The cars are faster, the drivers are more talented, the sport is more accessible, and the safety standards are a lot better. Now yes, the WRC is not in the healthiest position right now. It can be a lot better by having more competitors and making the accessibility a bit cheaper, but in general the WRC is in a much better place than the Group B days. So that's all from me. Hope you actually like this one and understand why I think Group B is overrated. Remember to hit the like, subscribe to my channel to help me hit 1000 subs, follow me on all of my other social media profiles, and I'll see you in the next one.